He woke up before the sun, the cold floor greeting his bare feet as he shuffled across the small apartment he shared with his child. The room smelled faintly of morning coffee and the lingering scent of yesterday's dinner, a constant reminder of how little he had to keep life comfortable. He reached for the alarm clock, the small digital numbers glowing 5:30 a.m., and sighed. Another long day was waiting. Being a single parent was not easy. Every morning was a quiet battle against exhaustion and worry. He had to get his child ready for school, pack a simple breakfast, and make sure lunch was tucked into the backpack. His child, still groggy from sleep, yawned and rubbed their eyes while he helped them tie shoelaces and fix a messy hairdo. There were no complaints, just sleepy murmurs and small, trusting smiles that reminded him why every effort mattered. After breakfast, they walked to the bus stop, holding hands in silence, the streets still empty and the air crisp. He watched the sun slowly rise over the buildings, feeling a small spark of hope each day, even though bills and responsibilities weighed heavily on his mind. On the way, he greeted neighbors with a tired smile, nodding to familiar faces without really stopping to chat. There was no time and there was always work to do. His job as a janitor was demanding. The building was large and each floor had its own set of problems. Doors needed cleaning, floors needed mopping, and the occasional plumbing issue required immediate attention. He moved methodically, pushing his cart through hallways, the wheels squeaking softly, echoing in the quiet early morning. He greeted the few early employees with a polite nod but rarely engaged beyond a simple hello. No one really noticed him. No one really cared about him beyond the fact that the floors were clean and the building functioned smoothly. Despite the physical exhaustion, he found comfort in small details. The smell of polished wood, the way the sunlight hit the lobby windows, the faint hum of the elevators. These small moments reminded him that life still held beauty, even if it was fleeting. He worked efficiently, knowing that every task completed on time meant a little less stress at home. Every shiny floor and spotless desk was a silent victory, a way to hold on to dignity in a world that often overlooked him. But he had another side, a part of him that no one at work knew about. Behind the janitor's uniform and the tired eyes was a man who once loved music deeply. Years ago, he had spent hours at a piano, letting his fingers fly over the keys, losing himself in melodies that spoke louder than words. Music had been a companion, a friend that understood him when few others did. He had dreams back then, dreams that had slowly faded into the background as life's responsibilities grew heavier. Now, the piano sat in a corner of the apartment, covered in dust, a silent witness to forgotten aspirations. He sometimes wondered what it would be like to play again. He would sit in the quiet of the night, listening to the sounds of the city outside, and imagine his fingers dancing across the keys, the notes filling the room with warmth. But reality always returned. The bills, the child, the endless cleaning and maintenance work. There was no room for dreams when life demanded survival. Yet, the desire never completely vanished. It lingered, soft but persistent, like a quiet hum beneath the surface of daily life. After finishing the early rounds of cleaning, he returned to the lobby to mop the large marble floor, the motion almost meditative. He watched the reflection of the lights ripple on the polished surface and felt a fleeting sense of pride. Even if the world didn't notice, he knew he was making a difference in his own small way. And there was satisfaction in that, a quiet strength that kept him going. Lunch was a brief moment of rest. He sat in a small break room, eating a simple sandwich, and watched coworkers chatter about work and weekend plans. He smiled politely, but the conversation felt distant, almost foreign. They spoke of things that didn't touch his life, vacations he couldn't afford, leisure activities he had no time for. Yet, he listened, absorbing fragments of normalcy, craving the sense of belonging that seemed just out of reach. Afternoons were tougher. The building was now filled with more people, the noise of phones ringing and footsteps echoing, making it hard to focus. He moved quickly from task to task, sometimes skipping breaks to keep up. There were moments when fatigue clawed at him, making him wish for a pause button, even for just a few minutes. But the responsibility of providing for his child pushed him forward. He couldn't stop. There was no choice. Evenings were the hardest. After leaving work, he picked up his child from the bus stop and returned to their modest apartment. Homework needed checking, dinner needed cooking, and bedtime routines demanded attention. He helped with reading, encouraged creativity with drawing and storytelling, and offered gentle guidance whenever his child needed it. These moments were fleeting but precious, a reminder that despite hardships, there was love and connection that could not be measured by money or status. As the night grew quiet, he would often find himself drawn to the piano. He would brush away the dust, lift the cover, and let his fingers hover above the keys. Sometimes he would play a single note, sometimes a short melody that felt familiar and comforting. The music was a secret gift, a private sanctuary where he could be himself without judgment. It reminded him that beneath the uniform, beneath the janitor role, there was still a person with passions, dreams, and emotions that ran deep. He often thought about the future, wondering if there could ever be a day when music could return to the center of his life, not just as a secret hobby, but as something that could inspire his child and others around him. He didn't know how that day would come, or if it ever would, but the thought gave him a spark of hope, small but steady, enough to keep him moving forward. Sleep came late, after stories had been read, homework checked, and the apartment finally quiet. He lay on his worn mattress, listening to the city sounds outside the window, his hand brushing over the piano keys one last time before closing his eyes. Tomorrow would be another long day, but he held on to the music in his heart, a silent promise that some part of him would never be lost. Life was a series of routines, responsibilities, and quiet sacrifices. But even in the struggle, there was beauty, love, and a hidden depth waiting for the right moment to shine. And though the world mostly saw him as a janitor, he knew the truth. He was more than a job, more than a title. He was a father, a dreamer, and a man with music in his soul, waiting for the day the world might finally notice. The day started like any other, with the early morning chill and the soft hum of the city waking up. He guided his child to the bus stop, exchanged the usual tired smiles with neighbors, and walked back to the apartment. But today something felt different. A small flyer had been pinned to the lobby notice board at work. A charity event was scheduled for the end of the week, and they were looking for performers to entertain guests. The flyer mentioned music, singing, and dance, with a bold line, "Last-minute performers welcome." He stopped to read it more closely. His fingers lingered on the paper, and memories from years ago bubbled up. He remembered evenings spent at the piano, fingers flying over keys, melodies filling rooms, and the feeling of pure joy it brought. He hadn't played in years, and the thought of stepping back into that world both thrilled and terrified him. Throughout the morning, he tried to focus on his cleaning routine. Floors needed mopping, trash needed emptying, and the occasional leak in the bathroom required fixing. His mind, however, kept returning to the flyer. Each time he passed it, the urge to play tugged a little stronger. He imagined his child's eyes lighting up if he could show them that dreams never truly disappear. Lunch came and went, but he barely touched his sandwich. He watched coworkers chat about the charity event. They were excited, sharing stories about performances they had seen or planned to participate in. He nodded politely, hiding the restless thoughts swirling inside him. One of the employees mentioned they still needed a pianist for the evening segment. Without thinking, his hand twitched, and he almost spoke, but he swallowed the words. What would they think? A janitor volunteering to play piano? Sounded absurd. Back in the afternoon, his routine continued, but now with a quiet undercurrent of tension. Every time someone mentioned the charity event, he felt a mix of fear and anticipation. What if he was laughed at? What if he forgot the music? What if he couldn't do it anymore? At the same time, the idea of sitting at a piano and letting music flow again was intoxicating. He imagined his fingers brushing across the keys, a melody starting softly and then rising, surprising everyone, even himself. After work, he returned home with his child. They shared a simple dinner, laughter spilling over small jokes and stories from the day. But the flyer stayed in his mind, gnawing at him quietly. After tucking the child into bed, He sat at the piano, dusting off the cover, lifting it slowly as if unveiling an old friend. The keys felt cold under his fingertips, but familiar. He pressed a note, then another, and another, the sound echoing softly in the quiet apartment. It was awkward at first, but a tiny spark ignited. Hours passed as he experimented with melodies, some familiar, some improvised. Each note was a small victory, a step closer to something he had once loved but had abandoned. He felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. Yet the reality of the charity event loomed in his mind. He still hadn't decided if he would step forward. It was a challenge, a test of courage, and he had always shied away from attention. The next day, he woke with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Thoughts of the event clashed with the monotony of work. As he moved through his janitor duties, a coworker approached him and asked casually, "Are you thinking about the charity event? They really need someone for the piano." His heart skipped a beat. He mumbled something non-committal, pretending he hadn't thought about it. But inside, his mind raced. He wanted to say yes, to feel the thrill and the fear collide. He imagined walking up to the piano, the crowd's eyes on him, the notes flowing, and his child watching with pride. Felt both terrifying and irresistible. During the day, more people mentioned the event, each comment nudging him closer to a decision. He found himself cleaning the lobby with unusual energy, his mind planning melodies and thinking of ways to surprise everyone. By mid-afternoon, he knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. He had to decide. He couldn't live with the regret of letting fear stop him from trying. After work, he sat at the piano again, the apartment dark except for a single lamp casting shadows across the keys. He played softly at first, letting the notes remind him of the joy he had forgotten. His fingers moved with growing confidence, each chord carrying memories and emotion. He imagined the audience at the charity event, their faces curious, their whispers fading as the music began to fill the room. Finally, he made up his mind. He would do it, not for recognition, not for praise, but for the simple truth that he loved music and that he wanted his child to see that courage could triumph over fear. He could not let this opportunity pass. It was a chance to reconnect with a part of himself that had been silent for too long. The following days were a mixture of nerves and preparation. He practiced in stolen moments, early mornings before work, late nights after his child slept. Every time he touched the keys, he felt a little more alive, a little more confident. He worried about making mistakes, about forgetting melodies, about the reactions of the people who only knew him as a janitor. But he reminded himself of why he was doing it. This was bigger than fear. This was about hope, about showing that hidden talents could exist in anyone, even in someone who had been overlooked for years. His child noticed the change. There were quiet conversations, whispers of curiosity, and small, encouraging smiles. It meant the world to him. The thought of making his child proud, of sharing the magic of music with them, gave him strength to push through exhaustion and self-doubt. He imagined their smile as he played, the light in their eyes reflecting the joy that music brought, and it became a driving force that kept him practicing late into the night. The day of the charity event finally arrived. He walked into the venue, the grandeur of the hall making him feel small and nervous. People chatted, laughed, and moved about, unaware of the storm of emotions inside him. He took a deep breath, reminding himself why he was here and who he was doing this for. This was his moment, not for anyone else, but for the hidden dreams and the child who looked up to him. When he approached the piano, his hands trembled slightly. He sat down, the polished keys cool beneath his fingers. The room quieted as people noticed him. A janitor in a simple uniform taking the seat meant for a performer. Whispers circulated, curiosity mingling with skepticism. He took another deep breath, closed his eyes for a brief moment, and then began to play. The first notes were soft, hesitant, but gradually confidence grew. He remembered the melodies that had once flowed naturally, and soon his fingers moved with familiarity and emotion. Each note told a story, not just of skill but of struggle, resilience, and hidden beauty. The audience leaned in, captivated by the unexpected depth of sound, coming from someone they had underestimated. In that moment, all the fear, all the exhaustion, and all the hidden years of quiet longing transformed into music. His heart swelled with emotion, and as he glanced at his child in the audience, their eyes wide with wonder and pride, he knew that this was more than just a performance. It was proof that courage and passion could defy circumstance, that even the most overlooked person could shine brightly when given the chance. And though the performance was far from over, the seed of transformation had already been planted. He had stepped into the light, facing fear and doubt, and allowed the world to see the music that had lived quietly in his soul for so long. For him, and for his child, this was the beginning of a new chapter, a reminder that hidden talents could emerge in the most unexpected moments, and that life, despite its hardships, still held surprises capable of taking breath away. The night after the decision to play, he could barely sleep. Thoughts of the upcoming performance swirled in his mind. He kept imagining the piano under the bright lights, the faces of the audience, the whispers of curiosity, and the weight of expectations that he had never felt before. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling both excitement and fear in equal measure. His hands itched to touch the keys, to let music flow again, to remind himself of the joy he had long abandoned. The next morning, he woke before dawn, careful not to wake his child, and tiptoed to the piano. He sat down, took a deep breath, and began to play softly. The first notes were shaky, but as he continued, they became more confident. He practiced scales and pieces he had once known by heart, and slowly, the old muscle memory returned. Every chord reminded him of nights long ago when he lost himself in music, when worries faded, and only the sound mattered. He didn't have much time to practice during the day. Work demanded his attention as usual. Floors needed mopping, bathrooms needed cleaning, and the occasional leak needed fixing. He moved through his tasks mechanically, but his mind often drifted back to the piano. During breaks, he hummed melodies under his breath, tapping rhythms on the cleaning cart. Every small moment became an opportunity to prepare, to visualize the performance, to feel the music inside him. At home, after tucking his child into bed, he returned to the piano. Nights became their sacred time. He experimented with different tunes, trying to blend pieces he remembered with new improvisations. He wanted the performance to be something that would surprise and captivate, not just a simple display of skill. His child occasionally peeked into the room, curious and excited, offering a small word of encouragement or clapping quietly. Those moments warmed his heart, reminding him why this mattered beyond the music itself. Days passed quickly, each filled with cleaning, repairs, and small joys at home. He kept his nerves in check, but the closer the charity event came, the harder it became. Doubts crept in. What if he forgot the notes? What if the audience laughed or ignored him? He had not performed publicly in years, and the fear of failure gnawed at him. He took long walks in the evening, practicing mentally, imagining the performance in his mind, rehearsing every note and every expression. He also started thinking about how to engage the audience. Music was not just about playing notes, it was about telling a story. He wanted each chord, each pause to carry emotion, to make people feel something real. He thought about the journey that had led him here, the long days of cleaning, the nights spent with his child, the hidden dreams, and the quiet moments of hope. He wanted the audience to see a piece of his soul through the music. At work, some coworkers noticed his quiet intensity. They asked questions, and he smiled politely but didn't reveal much. He preferred to keep it private, a secret only between him, the piano, and his child. There was comfort in that, in having a space where he could practice freely without judgment. The janitor role was demanding and visible, but the pianist inside him was personal and sacred. As the day of the event approached, he felt a strange mix of anticipation and exhaustion. He practiced more each night, sometimes until his fingers ached. But the more he played, the more alive he felt. Music became a bridge between the stress of daily life and the deeper desires of his heart. It reminded him that even in a life full of responsibilities, there was still room for beauty, expression, and growth. The night before the performance, he stayed up later than usual. He played every piece he had prepared, feeling the room fill with sound. His child watched quietly from the doorway, all written across their face. There was a sense of pride and wonder that he had never seen before, a silent acknowledgement that something extraordinary was about to happen. It strengthened his resolve, gave him courage to face the crowd, and made the fear seem smaller in comparison. On the morning of the charity event, he felt the tension in his chest, the nervous energy buzzing through his veins. He went through his usual routine, cleaning and preparing, but every action was accompanied by thoughts of the piano. He imagined the moment he would step onto the stage, the faces in the audience, the anticipation in the air. It was overwhelming, but it was also exhilarating. After work, he went home to change into clothes that were simple but neat. He wanted to feel confident, presentable, ready. He packed a small bag with sheet music and left for the venue early, hoping to have a few quiet moments with the piano before the performance. The city streets felt alive, buzzing with energy, yet he remained in a bubble of focus, his mind replaying melodies, imagining chords, preparing for every note. At the venue, the sight of the stage and the audience seats took his breath away. He felt small, almost invisible against the grandeur of the hall, but he reminded himself why he was there. This was not about impressing anyone or proving himself to the world. It was about stepping into a part of himself he had long ignored and sharing it with those willing to listen. The thought steadied his hands and calmed his mind. He moved toward the piano, the polished wood gleaming under the lights. The crowd was chatting, unaware of the moment about to unfold. He sat down, fingers hovering above the keys, feeling the weight of anticipation. There was a hush as people noticed him, whispers passing through the audience. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and let the music begin. The first notes were tentative, almost fragile, but gradually confidence grew. His fingers remembered the keys, the patterns, the rhythm. Slowly, the music expanded, filling the room with warmth and emotion. Each note carried a story. The struggles, the long days, the hidden dreams, and the quiet hope that had never left him. The audience leaned in, captivated by the unexpected beauty coming from someone they had overlooked for so long. He glanced briefly at his child in the audience, eyes wide with admiration, and felt a surge of pride and love. This performance was for them, for the hidden parts of himself, and for anyone who had ever felt unseen or underestimated. The music was no longer just notes. It was a message, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of pursuing what truly mattered. As the performance continued, he lost himself in the sound. Time seemed to slow, the world outside fading away. There was only the music, the piano, and the connection between performer and listener. Every chord resonated with emotion. Every pause held meaning. The audience could feel it, and slowly, a wave of admiration and awe spread across the hall. By the time the final note lingered in the air, the room was silent for a heartbeat before applause erupted. People stood, clapping, cheering, some even with tears in their eyes. He smiled, a mix of relief, pride, and amazement washing over him. He had done it. He had faced his fear, embraced his passion, and shared a piece of his soul with the world. And as he looked at his child's shining face, he knew this was only the beginning, that music, courage, and hidden talents could transform lives in ways he had never imagined. The hall was quiet now, the chatter having faded as everyone noticed the janitor sitting at the piano. There was a brief ripple of surprise, a few whispered questions. Who was he? How could someone in a janitor's uniform be here, about to play? He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all eyes on him, but he reminded himself why he was here. This was about more than impressing anyone. It was about music, courage, and sharing a piece of himself that had been hidden for too long. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the countless nights spent at home, practicing silently while his child slept. Each memory fueled him, grounding him and giving him courage. Slowly, he pressed the first key, a soft, tentative note that seemed to float through the room. The sound was gentle but steady, catching the attention of the audience. He continued, each note gaining confidence. The music was a mixture of melodies he had learned long ago and new improvisations, something familiar yet surprising. The audience began to lean in, intrigued by the unexpected beauty emanating from someone they had only known as a janitor. It was as if the music revealed a hidden world, a part of life that they had never imagined existing in such an ordinary person. His fingers moved fluidly now, no longer hesitant. Every chord, every sequence was full of emotion. The story of his life seemed to pour through the piano. The long days of work, the quiet nights at home, the hidden dreams, the love for his child, and the hope that had never faded. People listened in silence, captivated, their initial surprise turning into admiration and awe. He glanced at his child in the audience, eyes wide with pride and wonder. That small look, the joy reflected in their face, strengthened him even more. It was no longer just a performance. It was a message to them and to himself that hidden talents, passion, and courage could shine even in the most unlikely circumstances. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only the music and the connection between performer and listener. As the piece built, the notes became richer, more complex, carrying the weight of years of suppressed emotion. Some in the audience felt tears prick their eyes, moved by the raw honesty and beauty of the music. There were no words, just the pure language of sound that transcended social status, age, or expectation. The janitor at the piano was no longer invisible. He had transformed into a storyteller, a bridge between ordinary life and extraordinary expression. Midway through the performance, he introduced a section of gentle improvisation, letting his emotions guide his fingers. Each note was deliberate yet free, a conversation with the audience without uttering a single word. People sat, holding their breath, leaning forward, drawn into the narrative that unfolded through the music. He could feel the energy of the crowd, their admiration fueling his courage, allowing him to express himself more boldly than he ever thought possible. Sweat ran down his forehead, but he didn't mind. He was immersed in the music, riding the wave of emotion, letting it flow naturally. The hall seemed to vibrate with the resonance of the piano, and he felt a connection with each person listening. Even if they didn't know his story, they were experiencing something real, something unexpected, and that truth made the performance even more powerful. As the piece reached its climax, the music soared, filling every corner of the hall. He imagined his life's struggles and triumphs, translating each one into melody. The audience responded unconsciously, some swaying to the rhythm, some holding hands over their hearts. The music was not just entertainment. It was revelation, a glimpse into a life of resilience and hidden depth that no one had noticed before. He slowly began to bring the piece to an end, softening the final notes with care and emotion. The last chord lingered in the air, resonating gently before fading into silence. For a heartbeat, the room was still, as if no one dared to breathe. Then, the applause began, growing steadily until it filled the hall. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, some even wiping tears from their eyes. The janitor at the piano had astonished them all, not just with skill, but with the depth and honesty of his performance. He smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief washing over him. It was more than he had hoped for. He had faced his fear, embraced his talent, and shared a part of himself that had remained hidden for too long. His child ran forward, throwing arms around him, and whispered words of admiration that made his heart swell. That small moment, the shared joy, was the most rewarding part of all. The event organizers approached him, offering compliments and even suggesting opportunities for future performances. But he remained humble, grateful for the chance to play and to inspire through music. The recognition was secondary. The true reward was reconnecting with his passion and witnessing the joy and respect in his child's eyes and the audience's reactions. After the crowd settled and the evening wound down, he packed up his things, feeling a sense of accomplishment he had not experienced in years. The hall had been transformed by music, but more importantly, he had transformed himself. The shy, overlooked janitor had stepped into a new light, proving to himself and others that courage, talent, and dedication could create moments that left lasting impressions. Back at home, late into the night, he and his child replayed the day in conversation. They laughed, reminisced, and relived the excitement, each moment bringing them closer. The piano sat quietly in the corner, no longer just an object, but a symbol of perseverance, love, and the joy of following one's heart. He realized that while life remained full of challenges, the experience had shown him that hidden treasures, whether in music, courage, or love, could emerge when least expected. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about what had happened, the applause still echoing in his mind. He felt gratitude, pride, and a renewed sense of purpose. The janitor who had once felt invisible now carried a light inside, a spark that could inspire both his child and those around him. And in that quiet reflection, he knew that his life, though ordinary in many ways, could still be extraordinary through the simple act of embracing passion, courage, and authenticity. The days after the charity event were different. He returned to work as a janitor, but something had shifted inside him. The building, the floors, and the cleaning supplies were the same, but he walked with a little more confidence, a sense of pride quietly tucked beneath his uniform. People smiled at him differently, offering polite words that carried genuine warmth, as if they could see the person he had always been but had rarely shown. The performance had changed more than just others' perceptions. It had awakened something within him, a reminder that life held possibilities beyond routine and responsibility. Each day, he found himself glancing toward the piano, no longer a distant memory or a hidden secret, but a living, breathing part of his life. The joy of music now intertwined with the joy of everyday life, making each moment feel fuller. His child noticed the change too. They were eager to help him with the piano, asking questions about the notes and melodies. Sometimes, they would sit beside him as he played, experimenting with simple tunes and laughing when mistakes happened. Those moments were treasures, a shared world of music and learning that deepened their bond. He realized that through music, he could teach patience, resilience, and the importance of following one's passions, lessons far more valuable than any material gift. Opportunities began to emerge quietly, without him seeking them. A coworker invited him to play at a small local event, curious to see more of the music that had stunned them all. Another person suggested a community center that hosted amateur musicians. He accepted cautiously, feeling both excitement and nerves, but the memory of the charity event gave him courage. Each new chance to perform became a step forward, not for fame or recognition, but for the joy and connection that music created. One afternoon, while cleaning a hallway, a small group of coworkers approached him, hesitating before speaking. "We didn't know you could play like that," one said softly. "It was amazing." He nodded, smiling quietly, feeling warmth spread through him. The words were simple, but they carried validation he had long yearned for. Not just for skill, but for the courage it took to step forward. It reminded him that even in ordinary lives, extraordinary moments were possible. Life at home continued, filled with laughter, homework, and shared meals, but music now played a central role. The apartment no longer felt merely functional. It was alive with melody and creativity. He and his child would explore new songs together, experiment with rhythms, and sometimes just sit in silence after playing, feeling the echoes linger in the room. Music became both anchor and escape, a way to celebrate life and navigate its challenges. He began to see his responsibilities differently, too. Cleaning floors and maintaining the building were still necessary, but they no longer defined him. He was more than a janitor. He was a father, a musician, and a person capable of surprising the world. Each task became an opportunity to find small victories, to take pride in work that often went unnoticed, and to balance duty with personal fulfillment. The performance had shown him that value was not just in recognition, but in integrity, effort, and authenticity. As weeks passed, he started planning for a future where music and daily life could coexist. He saved a little money each month to invest in better piano books and small lessons for his child, nurturing talent and creativity. They dreamed together, imagining small performances at school events or local gatherings. The simple act of sharing music became a source of hope, a way to dream beyond limitations and explore what life could offer. Occasionally, he would think back to the charity event, recalling the audience's astonished faces and the thrill of performing. It felt almost surreal, a milestone that had quietly reshaped his perspective. He realized that life's surprises often came when least expected, and courage was not about perfection, but about stepping into the unknown despite fear. That memory became a guiding principle, a reminder that hidden abilities could emerge and transform lives when given a chance. Even at work, the janitor's role felt different now. He moved efficiently, of course, but he also allowed himself small moments of reflection. The building was clean and orderly, but it was also a stage for resilience, kindness, and dedication. Colleagues greeted him with smiles, children waved when they passed the hallways, and strangers sometimes paused to compliment the neatness of the space. Every acknowledgement, no matter how small, was a reminder that effort and talent, even when hidden, could leave lasting impressions. He also discovered the power of inspiration. Other staff members began sharing their own hidden talents, encouraged by his example. A coworker who painted secretly showed him small sketches. A receptionist who loved poetry recited a few lines with pride. He realized that by embracing his gift, he had unknowingly opened the door for others to feel confident in their own abilities. The ripple effect of courage and authenticity was far more meaningful than applause or recognition. At night, the apartment would fill with music again. Sometimes they played quietly, other times loudly, laughter and mistakes blending with melody. The piano was no longer just an object. It was a symbol of hope, perseverance, and shared joy. His child's excitement for music inspired him, and he, in turn, shared stories of the past, lessons learned, and the importance of believing in oneself. Together, they discovered that life's richness came not from ease or comfort, but from embracing challenges, following passions, and nurturing love. Months later, he reflected on how far he had come. The janitor who once felt invisible had grown into a person who balanced duty, passion, and parenthood with grace. Recognition came and went, but the deeper reward was the confidence, connection, and joy that music had brought into their lives. He realized that life's value was measured not by status, wealth, or titles, but by courage, love, and the willingness to embrace hidden talents and dreams. The piano continued to be a daily presence, a reminder of what was possible when one dared to step beyond fear. And every time he played, he thought of the charity event, the audience's surprise, and his child's pride. Those memories were more than nostalgia. They were fuel for future adventures, small or large, in music, life, and love. He understood now that every person had the power to astonish the world, not through grand gestures alone, but through quiet dedication, courage, and authenticity. As he tucked his child into bed each night, he felt gratitude for the journey, the struggles, and the small victories that had led them here. He whispered words of encouragement, promising that life was full of surprises, that talent and courage could thrive in unexpected places. And when he finally sat at the piano alone, letting his fingers glide across the keys, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The performance had been only the beginning, a catalyst for change, connection, and the realization that even ordinary lives could hold extraordinary beauty and meaning. Life continued, as life always does, with routines, challenges, and unexpected moments. But he had discovered something enduring: the power of music, the strength of courage, and the joy of nurturing a hidden gift. Each day brought new opportunities, small and significant, to share love, inspire, and live authentically. And in that, he found a lasting peace, a quiet triumph, and a heart full of music that would never again be silent.